Jessica sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of documents and looming deadlines. The office buzzed with activity as her colleagues chatted excitedly about an upcoming social event. She could hear snippets of their conversation, discussing outfits and who would be attending. Jessica felt a knot forming in her stomach, the familiar pressure to fit in weighing heavily on her mind. As she sorted through emails and juggled multiple tasks, Jessica couldn't help but overhear her co-workers planning their evening. They spoke of networking opportunities and the chance to impress higher-ups. Jessica knew she should want to attend, to be part of the group, but the thought of another forced social interaction made her anxious. The day dragged on, filled with meetings and urgent requests. By the time Jessica finished her work, most of her colleagues had already left for the event. She gathered her things, feeling a mix of relief and guilt for not joining them. As she stepped out of the office building, the cool evening air hit her face, offering a brief respite from the day's stress. Walking towards the parking lot, Jessica noticed a young man standing on the sidewalk. As she approached, he turned towards her with a friendly smile. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm Kevin. My car broke down, and I was wondering if I could get a ride to the nearest bus stop." Jessica hesitated, her eyes quickly scanning Kevin. He was a young black man, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. In that split second, Jessica's mind raced through a series of thoughts and assumptions. She felt her heart rate increase slightly as she considered the potential risks of giving a stranger a ride. "I'm sorry," Jessica replied, her voice tight. "I'm actually headed in the opposite direction." It was a lie, but it felt safer than outright refusal. She watched as disappointment flashed across Kevin's face. "Oh, okay, no problem. Thanks anyway," Kevin said, his shoulders slumping slightly as he turned away. Jessica hurried to her car, fumbling with her keys. As she slid into the driver's seat, she let out a long breath, feeling a mixture of relief and unease. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, glancing in her rearview mirror to see Kevin walking away. As she drove home, a nagging voice in the back of her mind began to question her decision. Had she really been in danger, or had she let unfounded fears guide her actions? Jessica tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on the road ahead, but the image of Kevin's disappointed face lingered. The quiet of her car allowed Jessica's mind to wander. She thought about her colleagues at the social event, probably mingling and advancing their careers. Then she thought about Kevin, left stranded on the sidewalk. The contrast between these two scenarios made her uncomfortable. Jessica arrived home, her apartment feeling emptier than usual. As she prepared a simple dinner for herself, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a mistake. The more she replayed the interaction in her mind, the more she realized that her decision had been based on snap judgments and ingrained biases. She sat down to eat, her food tasteless as she grappled with her thoughts. Jessica had always considered herself a good person, someone who treated others fairly, but her actions today had revealed a side of herself she wasn't proud of. As she finished her meal, Jessica resolved to be more aware of her biases in the future, though she wasn't quite sure how to go about it. The following morning, Jessica arrived at the office earlier than usual, her mind still preoccupied with the events of the previous evening. As she settled into her desk, a buzz of excitement rippled through the office. The new manager, Angela, was arriving today. Angela's reputation preceded her. She was known for her strong leadership skills and her ability to navigate the corporate world as a black woman in a predominantly white, male-dominated industry. As she walked into the office, heads turned. Angela exuded confidence, her crisp suit and purposeful stride demanding attention and respect. Jessica watched as Angela greeted each team member, her warm smile and firm handshake putting everyone at ease. There was something about Angela that commanded admiration, not just for her professional achievements, but for the poise with which she carried herself. Later that morning, Jessica found herself in a team meeting led by Angela. The new manager wasted no time in addressing the company's goals and her vision for the team. "One of our key focuses moving forward," Angela stated, her voice clear and authoritative, "will be on fostering a more inclusive and diverse work environment." Jessica listened, her expression neutral, as Angela outlined plans for diversity training and initiatives to promote equality in the workplace. While part of her recognized the importance of these issues, another part remained skeptical. She couldn't help but wonder if these were just empty corporate buzzwords. As the meeting progressed, Jessica noticed how Angela made a point of engaging every team member, regardless of their position or background. She encouraged open dialogue and seemed genuinely interested in hearing different perspectives. Despite her initial skepticism, Jessica found herself impressed by Angela's leadership style. After the meeting concluded and the team began to disperse, Angela called out, "Jessica, could I have a word with you in private?" Jessica felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach as she followed Angela to her office. Once inside, Angela closed the door and turned to face Jessica. Her expression was serious, a stark contrast to the warm smile she had worn throughout the meeting. "Jessica," she began, her voice low and measured, "I wanted to speak with you about an incident that occurred yesterday evening." Jessica's heart sank. Somehow she knew exactly what Angela was referring to. "I understand you refused to give my son, Kevin, a ride when his car broke down," Angela continued, her gaze steady and unwavering. The realization hit Jessica like a physical blow. Kevin, the young man she had turned away, was Angela's son. She felt a wave of shame wash over her as she struggled to find words to respond. I didn't know he was your son," Jessica stammered, immediately regretting her words. It shouldn't matter whose son he was, her actions were still wrong. Angela's expression softened slightly, but her disappointment was palpable. "Jessica, I'm not upset because he's my son. I'm disappointed because your actions reflect a deeper issue that we, as a society, need to address." Jessica listened, her face burning with embarrassment as Angela continued. "I've faced discrimination and prejudice throughout my career. I've been overlooked for promotions, had my ideas dismissed, and been made to feel like I didn't belong. And now to see my son face similar treatment, it's heartbreaking." Angela's words struck a chord with Jessica. She had never considered how her small action could be part of a larger, systemic problem. As Angela spoke about her experiences and the challenges she and her son had faced, Jessica felt her perspective shifting. "I'm sharing this with you," Angela concluded, "not to make you feel guilty, but to help you understand the impact of unconscious biases. We all have them, Jessica. The key is recognizing them and actively working to overcome them." As the conversation drew to a close, Jessica felt a mix of emotions: shame, regret, but also a growing determination to do better. She left Angela's office with a lot to think about, knowing that this conversation had marked a turning point in her understanding of diversity and inclusion. Jessica returned to her desk, her mind reeling from the conversation with Angela. She sat down, barely noticing the bustle of the office around her, as she replayed Angela's words in her head. For the first time, Jessica began to truly consider the impact of her actions and the unconscious biases that had influenced her decision. As she attempted to focus on her work, Jessica found herself distracted by memories of past interactions. Had there been other times when she had made snap judgments based on appearance or background? The thought made her uncomfortable, forcing her to confront aspects of herself she had never examined before. Throughout the day, Jessica observed her colleagues with new eyes. She noticed the diversity or lack thereof in different departments. She paid attention to who spoke up in meetings and whose ideas were given more weight. These were things she had never consciously considered before, but now they seemed glaringly obvious. During lunch, Jessica overheard a conversation between two co-workers discussing a recent company event. One of them mentioned feeling out of place, being the only person of color in attendance. Jessica felt a pang of empathy, remembering Angela's words about the challenges she had faced in her career. As the afternoon wore on, Jessica found herself increasingly distracted by her thoughts. She began to question many of her long-held beliefs and assumptions. Had she been contributing to a culture of exclusion without even realizing it? The weight of this realization was both overwhelming and motivating. Towards the end of the day, Jessica mustered up the courage to approach Angela's office. She knocked tentatively, her heart racing as she heard Angela's voice inviting her in. Jessica took a deep breath and entered the room. "Angela," Jessica began, her voice slightly shaky. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation earlier. I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for my actions, and I'm committed to doing better. But I'm not sure where to start." Angela looked up from her computer, her expression softening as she saw the sincerity in Jessica's eyes. "Jessica, recognizing that there's a problem is the first step. Many people never get that far. The fact that you're here, asking how to improve, shows that you're ready to grow." Jessica listened intently as Angela shared some resources on diversity and inclusion. She suggested books, workshops, and online courses that could help Jessica better understand the experiences of marginalized groups and how to be an ally. "Remember," Angela said, "this isn't about feeling guilty. It's about being aware and making conscious choices to create a more inclusive environment for everyone." As Jessica left Angela's office, she felt a mix of emotions. There was still shame and regret over her actions, but also a sense of hope and determination. She knew that changing ingrained thought patterns wouldn't be easy, but she was committed to making that change. That evening, as Jessica drove home, she noticed things she had never paid attention to before. The diversity of people on the streets, the variety of businesses owned by people of different backgrounds, the subtle ways in which some areas seemed more welcoming to certain groups than others. At home, instead of her usual routine, Jessica spent the evening researching. She looked up the resources Angela had mentioned and began reading about unconscious bias, systemic racism, and the experiences of marginalized communities. The more she read, the more she realized how much she had to learn. As she prepared for bed, Jessica's mind was still buzzing with new information and perspectives. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey of self-reflection and growth. There would be uncomfortable moments and difficult realizations ahead, but Jessica was determined to face them. She set her alarm for the next morning, planning to wake up early and continue her research before work. For the first time in a long time, Jessica felt a sense of purpose beyond her day-to-day job responsibilities. She was embarking on a journey of personal growth that would not only change her but potentially impact those around her as well. As she drifted off to sleep, Jessica made a silent promise to herself and to Kevin, Angela, and all those she may have unknowingly affected with her biases in the past. She vowed to do better, to be better, and to actively work towards creating a more inclusive world, starting with her own actions and attitudes. The following weeks brought significant changes to Jessica's life. After careful consideration and a frank discussion with Angela, Jessica decided to take a temporary leave from work to focus on personal growth and education. She felt it was necessary to step back and reevaluate her perspectives before she could contribute positively to her workplace and community. Jessica's first step was to enroll in a series of workshops on diversity, equity, and inclusion. These sessions were eye-opening, challenging her to confront her own biases and preconceptions. In one particularly impactful exercise, participants were asked to share experiences of discrimination or privilege. Jessica found herself struggling to speak, realizing how limited her understanding had been of others' experiences. As the workshops progressed, Jessica became more comfortable engaging in difficult conversations. She learned about microaggressions, systemic racism, and the importance of allyship. Each session left her with new insights and a growing awareness of the complexities of social justice issues. One day, during a group discussion, Jessica shared the story of her interaction with Kevin. Her voice trembled as she recounted the incident, but she forced herself to be honest about her thoughts and actions. The facilitator used this as a teaching moment, guiding the group through an analysis of unconscious bias and its impacts. Outside of the workshops, Jessica immersed herself in books, documentaries, and podcasts recommended by her instructors and fellow participants. She found herself staying up late, absorbing stories and perspectives she had never considered before. The more she learned, the more she realized how much she still had to learn. Inspired by her newfound knowledge and determined to make a tangible difference, Jessica decided to volunteer in a marginalized community. She reached out to a local community center and offered her administrative skills to help with their programs. On her first day of volunteering, Jessica felt nervous and out of place. The community was predominantly Black and Latino, and she was acutely aware of her status as an outsider. However, the staff and other volunteers welcomed her warmly, appreciating her willingness to help and learn. As weeks passed, Jessica became more involved in the community center's activities. She helped organize after-school programs, assisted with job training workshops, and even tutored adults studying for their GED. Through these interactions, she began to understand the daily challenges faced by many in the community, challenges she had previously been blind to. One afternoon, while helping a young mother fill out job applications, Jessica was struck by the woman's resilience. Despite facing numerous obstacles, including lack of childcare and limited transportation options, she remained determined to build a better life for her family. Jessica realized that her own struggles paled in comparison, and she felt a deep sense of admiration and respect. The experience at the community center was transformative for Jessica. She saw firsthand the impact of systemic inequalities and the strength of those fighting against them. She also witnessed the power of community support and the difference that dedicated volunteers could make. As her leave from work neared its end, Jessica felt like a different person. Her perspective had broadened, her empathy had deepened, and her commitment to social justice had solidified. She was eager to return to her job, not just as an employee, but as an advocate for change. In her final week of volunteering, Jessica organized a small career fair at the community center, leveraging her professional contacts to bring in potential employers. As she watched community members confidently presenting themselves to recruiters, she felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. On her last day, the community center staff threw a small goodbye party for Jessica. As she looked around at the faces of people she had come to know and care for, she realized that this experience had given her far more than she had given in return. She had come seeking to educate herself, but she had found a new purpose and a broader understanding of humanity. As Jessica prepared to return to her corporate job, she knew that her journey was far from over. She was committed to bringing her new perspectives and experiences back to her workplace, determined to be an agent of change and an ally to those facing discrimination and bias. The path ahead would not be easy, but Jessica felt ready to face the challenges, armed with knowledge, empathy, and a renewed sense of purpose. While Jessica was on her journey of self-discovery and growth, Angela and Kevin were navigating their own challenges. One evening, they sat in their comfortable living room, engaged in a heartfelt discussion about Kevin's recent experiences at school. "Mom, it happened again today," Kevin said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Some guys in my class made comments about my hair. They asked if they could touch it, like I'm some kind of exhibit." Angela listened intently, her face a mixture of concern and understanding. "Kevin, I'm sorry you're going through this. Unfortunately, these microaggressions are something many of us face. How did you handle it?" Kevin sighed. "I told them it wasn't appropriate to ask that, and that my hair isn't there for their curiosity. But it still bothers me. Why can't they just see me as another student?" Angela nodded. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It's not easy, but it's important. Remember, your worth isn't determined by their ignorance or curiosity." As they continued their conversation, Angela shared some of her own experiences facing discrimination in the corporate world. She spoke about being overlooked for promotions, having her ideas dismissed, and constantly feeling the need to prove herself. "But you're so successful now," Kevin said, looking at his mother with admiration. "How did you overcome all that?" Angela smiled softly. "It wasn't easy, and the journey isn't over. I had to work twice as hard, be twice as good, but more importantly, I had to believe in myself and my abilities. I also found mentors and allies who supported me along the way." Their discussion shifted to the importance of self-esteem and self-respect in the face of prejudice. Angela emphasized that while it was crucial to stand up against discrimination, it was equally important not to let others' biases define one's self-worth. As the evening progressed, Kevin opened up about his growing interest in social justice. "You know, Mom, seeing how that woman Jessica is trying to change, it's made me think. I want to do something more. I want to be an advocate for change, like you." Angela's eyes lit up with pride. "That's wonderful, Kevin. The world needs more people willing to stand up and make a difference. What are you thinking of doing?" Kevin shared his ideas about starting a diversity and inclusion club at his school, organizing workshops on racial sensitivity, and maybe even pursuing a career in civil rights law. As he spoke, his enthusiasm was palpable, and Angela couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and hope for the future. "You know, your experiences, both good and bad, can be powerful tools for change," Angela said. "By sharing your story, like how you handled the situation today, you can help others understand and maybe even change their perspectives." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "I hadn't thought of it that way. Do you think I could talk to Jessica sometime? I'd like to hear about what she's learned and maybe share some of my experiences too." Angela smiled warmly. "I think that's a great idea. I'll reach out to her when she's back at work. Your perspective could be very valuable to her journey." As their conversation wound down, both Angela and Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had always been close, but this shared commitment to fighting for equality and justice brought them even closer. Before heading to bed, Kevin hugged his mother tightly. "Thanks, Mom, for everything, for being such a great role model and for always supporting me." Angela returned the hug, feeling a surge of emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Kevin. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, you have the strength and the intelligence to overcome them, and you'll always have me in your corner." As they said goodnight, both Angela and Kevin felt energized by their conversation. They were reminded that change, while often difficult, was possible. And it started with individuals like them, willing to stand up, speak out, and work towards a more just and equitable world. Weeks passed, and Jessica's return to work coincided with a community event she had been planning during her time away. The fundraiser aimed to bring together people from different backgrounds to support local initiatives for underprivileged youth. As the day of the event arrived, Jessica felt a mix of nervousness and determination. The community center where Jessica had volunteered was bustling with activity. Tables were set up with information about various programs, and a small stage was prepared for speakers. Jessica moved around the room, making last-minute adjustments and greeting early arrivals. As more people filed in, Jessica took a deep breath, steeling herself for her opening speech. She had never been comfortable with public speaking, but she knew the importance of sharing her journey and the event's purpose. As she stepped onto the stage, she scanned the crowd, noticing familiar faces from work mixed with community members she had met during her volunteer work. "Good evening, everyone," Jessica began, her voice slightly shaky. "Thank you all for coming. A few months ago, I wouldn't have imagined myself standing here. But a series of events led me on a journey of self-discovery and growth that I'd like to share with you." As Jessica recounted her experiences, from her interaction with Kevin to her time volunteering in the community, she could see people in the audience nodding in recognition or listening intently. She spoke about the biases she had confronted within herself and the lessons she had learned along the way. "This event isn't just about raising funds," Jessica concluded. "It's about building bridges, fostering understanding, and working together to create a more inclusive community. I hope that by sharing my story, I can encourage others to embark on their own journeys of growth and understanding." As Jessica stepped down from the stage, she was met with warm applause. She felt a sense of relief and accomplishment, having shared her experiences openly and honestly. As she moved through the crowd, engaging in conversations and answering questions, Jessica noticed a familiar face approaching. It was Kevin, Angela's son. the young man whose interaction had set her on this path of change. "Hi, Jessica," Kevin said, extending his hand. "I'm not sure if you remember me, but I'm Kevin. I wanted to introduce myself properly this time." Jessica felt a rush of emotions: surprise, guilt, and a deep sense of gratitude. "Kevin, of course I remember you. I'm so glad you're here. I owe you an apology for how I treated you that day." Kevin smiled warmly. "No apologies necessary. My mom told me about your journey, and I'm really impressed by what you've done. I actually came here today to volunteer. Is there anything I can help with?" Jessica was touched by Kevin's forgiveness and eagerness to help. "Absolutely. We could use some help at the information booth. Would you mind manning it for a while?" As Kevin nodded and moved towards the booth, Jessica felt a profound sense of how things had come full circle. The person she had once unfairly judged was now standing beside her as an ally in her efforts for change. Throughout the event, Jessica observed Kevin interacting with attendees, confidently explaining the various programs and initiatives. She could see that he had a natural ability to connect with people and a passion for the cause. As the evening progressed, Jessica found herself in conversation with various attendees, sharing experiences and discussing ways to promote inclusivity in their community. She was struck by the diversity of perspectives and the genuine interest people showed in learning and growing. Towards the end of the event, Jessica and Kevin found a moment to talk more. Kevin shared some of his own experiences with discrimination and his growing interest in social justice. Jessica listened intently, realizing how much she could still learn from others' experiences. "You know," Kevin said, "seeing you change and organize this event, it's really inspiring. It shows that people can grow and make a difference." Jessica felt a lump in her throat, touched by Kevin's words. "Thank you, Kevin. Your forgiveness and your presence here today mean more than you know." As the event wound down and people began to leave, Jessica felt a sense of accomplishment tinged with the realization that this was just the beginning. The conversations she had had, the connections made, and the awareness raised all pointed to a long but worthwhile journey ahead. Jessica knew that maintaining this momentum would be challenging, but as she looked around at the diverse group of people who had come together for this cause, she felt hopeful. She had taken the first steps towards creating real change, not just in herself, but in her community, and with allies like Kevin by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the event was winding down, Jessica noticed Angela entering the community center. She had arrived late due to a work commitment, but was determined to show her support. Angela's presence added an extra layer of significance to the evening, completing the circle of transformation that had begun with that fateful interaction months ago. Angela made her way through the thinning crowd, stopping to chat with various attendees and observing the impact of the event. When she finally reached Jessica, her face broke into a warm smile. "Jessica," Angela said, extending her hand, "this is truly impressive. You've taken a personal awakening and turned it into community action. I'm proud of you." Jessica felt a rush of emotion at Angela's words. "Thank you, Angela. I couldn't have done this without your guidance and support. Your willingness to share your experiences and challenge me, it changed everything." As they began to clean up the venue, Angela and Jessica fell into a deep conversation. They discussed the challenges they had both faced in their careers and personal lives, finding common ground despite their different backgrounds. "You know," Angela said as they folded up a banner, "I've faced my share of discrimination and prejudice throughout my career. There were times when I felt like giving up, when the weight of constantly having to prove myself became too much." Jessica listened intently, realizing that despite Angela's success, her journey had been far from easy. "How did you push through?" she asked. Angela paused, considering her answer. "I reminded myself of why I started, of the people I could help by persevering. And I found allies, people who recognized my worth and supported me. It wasn't always easy to trust, especially after being let down so many times, but those allies made all the difference." As they continued to talk, Jessica shared some of her own insecurities and challenges. She spoke about the discomfort of confronting her own biases and the fear of making mistakes as she tried to be a better ally. Angela listened with empathy, offering advice and encouragement. Jessica, the fact that you're willing to acknowledge your mistakes and actively work to do better, that's what matters. We're all on a journey of growth and learning. The key is to keep moving forward, even when it's uncomfortable. Their conversation shifted to the future, discussing ways to bring more inclusive practices into their workplace and community. They bounced ideas off each other, their different perspectives complementing each other and leading to innovative solutions. As they were finishing up, Kevin joined them, energized from his experience at the information booth. He shared some of the conversations he'd had and the connections he'd made, his excitement palpable. Angela watched her son with pride, turning to Jessica with a smile. You see, Jessica, your actions have had a ripple effect. Kevin's always been passionate about justice, but seeing your transformation has inspired him to take action in his own way. Kevin nodded enthusiastically. Definitely. Jessica, your story showed me that change is possible, that people can learn and grow. It's made me want to do more, to be part of that change. As the three of them stood there, surrounded by the remnants of the event, Jessica felt a profound sense of connection. She realized that her journey had not only transformed her, but had created a bond between them. Three individuals from different walks of life, united in their commitment to creating a more inclusive world. Before they parted ways for the evening, Angela pulled Jessica aside. You know, Jessica, when we first had that conversation in my office, I saw potential in you. But what you've done, how far you've come, it's beyond what I could have hoped for. You're not just an ally now, you're a leader in this cause. Jessica felt a mix of pride and humility at Angela's words. Thank you, Angela, but I still have so much to learn, so much to do. Angela squeezed her shoulder gently. That's exactly why you're a leader. You recognize that this is an ongoing journey. And Jessica, I'm honored to be on this journey with you. As they said their goodbyes, Jessica watched Angela and Kevin leave, their heads bent in animated conversation. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and connection. What had started as a personal journey of growth had blossomed into something much larger, a network of individuals committed to change, supporting and inspiring each other along the way. A few weeks after the successful community event, Jessica found herself back in the familiar setting of a company meeting room. However, this time she wasn't just another face in the crowd. She had requested this meeting with the leadership team, including Angela, to propose a new company-wide diversity and inclusion program. As her colleagues filed in and took their seats, Jessica felt a mix of nervousness and determination. She had spent countless hours researching, planning, and preparing for this moment. As the room settled, she took a deep breath and began her presentation. Good morning, everyone, Jessica started, her voice steady despite her nerves. Today, I'd like to propose a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program for our company. This isn't just about meeting quotas or ticking boxes. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, heard, and able to contribute their best. Jessica outlined her proposal, which included regular workshops, mentoring programs, and changes to hiring and promotion practices. She emphasized the business benefits of a diverse workforce, citing studies that showed improved innovation, decision-making, and employee satisfaction in inclusive environments. As she spoke, Jessica could see a mix of reactions from her audience. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical. She had anticipated this and was prepared to address concerns. I know some of you might be wondering why we need this, Jessica acknowledged. You might think our current practices are fine. But let me share some anonymous feedback I've gathered from our employees. She presented quotes and statistics that revealed underlying issues of bias and exclusion within the company. The room grew quiet as the reality of these experiences sank in. As Jessica concluded her presentation, she looked directly at her colleagues. This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about recognizing that we can do better, and taking concrete steps to create a more inclusive environment for everyone. The room was silent for a moment before the discussion began. Some executives raised concerns about cost and implementation, while others questioned the necessity of such a program. One particularly skeptical colleague, Mark, spoke up. "This all sounds nice in theory, Jessica, but isn't this just creating more division? Shouldn't we be focusing on qualifications rather than diversity?" Before Jessica could respond, Angela interjected. "Mark, I understand your concern, but I think you're missing the point. This program isn't about lowering our standards or creating division. It's about ensuring that everyone has a fair chance to showcase their qualifications and contribute to our company." Jessica nodded gratefully at Angela before addressing Mark directly. "Moreover, diversity isn't just about race or gender. It's about bringing together different perspectives, experiences, and ways of thinking. That diversity of thought is what drives innovation and helps us better serve our diverse customer base." The discussion continued, with Jessica confidently addressing each concern and question. She could see attitudes slowly shifting as her colleagues began to understand the depth and importance of the issue. As the meeting drew to a close, the CEO spoke up. "Jessica, Angela, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's clear that this is something we need to address. I'm approving the program, and I want regular updates on its implementation and impact." Jessica felt a surge of relief and excitement. Her proposal had been accepted, but she knew this was just the beginning. Implementing the program would bring its own set of challenges. As people began to file out of the room, several colleagues approached Jessica to express their support and offer help. She was touched by their enthusiasm and willingness to be part of the change. Angela was the last to leave, hanging back to speak with Jessica privately. "You did an excellent job in there," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You've come a long way from that first conversation in my office. Are you ready for the work ahead?" Jessica nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and determination. "It won't be easy," she admitted, "but it's necessary, and I'm committed to seeing it through." As they left the meeting room together, Jessica felt a sense of purpose stronger than she'd ever experienced in her career. She knew there would be challenges ahead, resistance to overcome, and much work to be done. But she also knew that with allies like Angela, and the support of those who believed in the importance of this work, real change was possible. The journey towards a more inclusive workplace had truly begun. As Jessica and Angela worked to implement the new diversity and inclusion program at their company, Kevin was facing his own challenges at school. One particularly tense day, Kevin found himself the target of a verbal attack from a classmate during lunch. "Hey, Kevin," the classmate, a white student named Tyler, called out loudly. "I heard you got into State University. Must be nice to have affirmative action on your side, huh?" The cafeteria grew quiet as students turned to watch the confrontation. Kevin felt a rush of anger and hurt, but he remembered the conversations he'd had with his mother and Jessica about handling such situations. Taking a deep breath, Kevin stood up and faced Tyler. "You know what, Tyler? I got into State University because of my grades, my extracurriculars, and my hard work. The fact that you immediately assume it's because of affirmative action says more about your prejudices than about my achievements." Tyler looked taken aback, clearly not expecting such a direct response. But Kevin wasn't finished. "And you know what else?" Kevin continued, his voice steady and clear. "Even if affirmative action played a role, it exists to counteract years of systemic discrimination that have disadvantaged people of color. It's about leveling the playing field, not giving unfair advantages." The cafeteria remained silent, with students and even a few teachers listening intently. Kevin's words seemed to resonate with many of his classmates of color, who nodded in agreement. Emboldened by the support he saw, Kevin decided to take his stand a step further. "I'm tired of comments like these being thrown around casually. It's not just me. I've seen and heard similar things happening to other students of color, to LGBTQ+ students, to anyone who's perceived as different. It needs to stop." As Kevin spoke, he noticed a group of students from the school newspaper taking notes. He realized this moment could be more than just a personal stand. It could be the start of a larger conversation. In the days that followed, Kevin's confrontation became a hot topic of discussion throughout the school. The school newspaper ran a front-page article about the incident, sparking debates about racism, microaggressions, and the need for better education on diversity and inclusion. Inspired by the response, Kevin decided to take action. He approached the school administration with a proposal to form a student-led diversity and inclusion committee. To his surprise and delight, the principal was receptive to the idea, seeing it as an opportunity to address long-standing issues within the school community. As Kevin worked to establish the committee, he found support from unexpected quarters. Students from various backgrounds, including some who had previously been silent on these issues, volunteered to join. Even Tyler, the student who had made the initial comment, approached Kevin to apologize and ask how he could learn to do better. At home, Kevin shared these developments with Angela and Jessica, who had become a frequent visitor and friend to the family. Both women listened with pride as Kevin recounted his experiences. "You know, Kevin," Jessica said, "what you're doing at your school mirrors what your mom and I are trying to do at our company. It's not easy, but it's so important." Angela nodded in agreement. "I'm so proud of you, son. You're not just standing up for yourself, but you're creating a platform for others to be heard too. That's real leadership." Kevin smiled, feeling a mix of pride and determination. "I just keep thinking about what you both have taught me, about the importance of speaking up, of education, of creating spaces for difficult but necessary conversations." As they continued to talk, the three of them began to see how their individual efforts were part of a larger movement. Kevin's actions at school, Jessica and Angela's work at their company, and their community outreach were all interconnected, creating ripples of change that extended far beyond their immediate circles. "You know," Angela said thoughtfully, "we should think about how we can connect these efforts. Maybe your school committee could collaborate with our company's program, Kevin. We could organize joint workshops or mentoring programs." Jessica's eyes lit up at the idea. "That's brilliant. It would give the students exposure to professional environments and give our employees a chance to engage with the next generation. We could create a pipeline for internships and future employment too." As they continued to brainstorm, Kevin felt a sense of excitement growing. What had started as a personal stand against a hurtful comment was evolving into something much bigger. He realized that he, along with Jessica and his mother, were not just passive participants in change, they were active creators of it. The evening ended with a sense of purpose and possibility. Kevin, Angela, and Jessica knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, setbacks, and difficult conversations. But they also knew that they had each other's support, and that their combined efforts could create meaningful, lasting change in their community and beyond. Several months into the implementation of the diversity and inclusion initiatives at both the company and Kevin's school, the impact of their efforts was becoming increasingly evident. However, not everyone was receptive to these changes, and tensions were about to come to a head. At a high-level executive meeting, Jessica and Angela were presenting the progress of their diversity program when they were interrupted by Richard, a long-standing board member known for his conservative views. "This is all well and good," Richard said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But aren't we losing sight of what's really important here? We're a business, not a social justice organization. How is this affecting our bottom line?" Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but Angela placed a gentle hand on her arm, silently asking to handle this. "Richard," Angela began, her voice calm but firm, "I'm glad you brought this up. Let me show you exactly how this program is affecting our bottom line." She proceeded to present data showing improved employee satisfaction, decreased turnover rates, and even an uptick in innovative ideas coming from diverse teams. "Furthermore," Angela continued, "our more inclusive hiring practices have allowed us to tap into talent pools we were previously overlooking, giving us a competitive edge in the market. Richard seemed taken aback by the concrete data, but wasn't ready to concede. That's all fine, but what about the costs and the potential for reverse discrimination? Are we pushing out qualified candidates just to meet some quota? Before Angela could respond, Jessica stepped in. Richard, I understand your concerns, but this program isn't about quotas or pushing anyone out. It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive and contribute their best work. And as for costs, consider this an investment. The returns, both tangible and intangible, far outweigh the initial expenditure. The room fell silent as the other executives considered their words. It was clear that Richard's views were not shared by the majority, but his influence as a long-standing board member made others hesitant to openly disagree with him. Suddenly, the door opened and Kevin walked in. He had been invited to speak about the student program and its connection to the company's internship initiative, but he had arrived early and overheard the heated discussion. "Excuse me," Kevin said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I know I'm just a student, but I think I have something valuable to add to this conversation." All eyes turned to Kevin as he began to speak. He shared his experiences of discrimination, both subtle and overt, and how initiatives like the ones being discussed had made a real difference in his school. He talked about the increased engagement of students, the reduction in bullying incidents, and the creation of a more positive learning environment. "But it's not just about making people feel good," Kevin continued. "These programs are preparing us for the real world, a world that is diverse and interconnected. Companies that embrace diversity and inclusion aren't just doing the right thing morally, they're positioning themselves for success in a global market." As Kevin spoke, Jessica and Angela exchanged proud glances. Richard, meanwhile, looked increasingly uncomfortable. Kevin concluded by addressing Richard directly. "Sir, I understand your concerns about the bottom line, but consider this. In a few years, people like me will be your employees, your customers, your partners. By embracing diversity now, you're not just improving your current business, you're future-proofing it." The room erupted in applause as Kevin finished speaking. Even Richard seemed moved, though he tried to hide it. In the aftermath of this meeting, several significant changes occurred. Richard, faced with overwhelming evidence and support for the diversity initiatives, decided to step down from the board, citing a need for fresh perspectives in the company's leadership. The CEO, impressed by Kevin's articulate defense of the program, offered him a paid internship on the spot, seeing him as a future leader in the making. As for Jessica and Angela, their positions within the company were solidified. They were now seen not just as advocates for diversity, but as strategic thinkers who could drive the company forward in an increasingly diverse and globalized world. That evening, as Jessica, Angela, and Kevin celebrated their collective victory, they reflected on how far they had come. What had started with a moment of prejudice had blossomed into a movement that was changing lives and shaping the future of their community. "You know," Jessica said, raising her glass in a toast, "this journey has taught me that change is possible. It's not easy and it's not always comfortable, but when we stand together and speak up for what's right, we can make a real difference." Angela and Kevin nodded in agreement, clinking their glasses together. They knew that their work was far from over, but they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had proven that compassion, courage, and commitment could overcome prejudice and create a more inclusive world for all.